can't run a cable to a boat when it's floating in the Med or the Caribbean, can you? It's a bit more tricky.
The shipyards have to basically build a floating town. Yacht in itself is its own ecosystem. Once it sails away, it's generating its own power, cleaning its own water, disposing of its own waste. Then you've got to put the things that the owner desires into that space.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Smarter Spaces podcast, your regular update on all things going on in the world. Well, I say the world of spaces. Traditionally, we've done sort of meeting room spaces, education spaces, we've done residential, but we're going on the water today. We're going and talking about superyacht technology and our marine focus here at Crestron. Spaces can take all forms of, as I say, the way in which they're consumed. It could be your lounge or it could be the upper deck of a beautiful superyacht. So I've got a co-host who's going to be helping us out on today's show because I'm not a marine expert. So first off, let's introduce our co-host, Daniel Kerkhof from Crestron Marine. Daniel, how are you doing?
Doing good, Neil. Good to see you.
Good, and thank you for coming on and helping me with all things nautical. I traditionally talk about Microsoft Teams and Zoom in boardrooms. You talk about super yachts and all that kind of good stuff. So you're absolutely going to be helping and running that. And then our two guests joining us on today's episode. We have Steve Puckering, who is Chief Executive of Smart Technologies, and Tom Richardson. Steve, thank you for joining us on today's Smarter Spaces podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
That's great. And Tom, you are the man that's going to be talking about all of the speeds and the feeds and the technology on today's show. So welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Very, very cool. So let's, I guess, to start off and introduce yourselves and your background. Steve, do you want to just talk a little bit, again, we talked in the green room a little bit about smart technology advisors, but now we've hit record. Tell the audience what is and who are smart technology advisors and what do you do?
Smart Technology Advisors is basically a boutique design and advisory house, primarily for the marine sector and super yachts specifically. We look after ultra high net worth individuals. We do high tech. We do bespoke. We do odd installations, difficult ones, complex ones, so on and so forth. And basically are deployed and employed by clients directly or in association with shipyards. We liaise with designers and obviously the likes of Crestron liaise with us in respect of solutions provisions.
Very cool. Now, obviously, when it comes to super yachts, we're not talking about the traditional motorboat in this case. The customers, the clientele, as you mentioned, the high net worth individuals that you're going to be talking to, and the kind of spaces, the challenges you have about getting content, whether that be audio content to different spaces, simultaneous, synchronized content, also being able to have different content playing in different spaces and personalized to the unique viewing and audio experiences required to the locations on board. I guess we'll start this off, and I'll throw this one to Tom. When obviously people come to you, is it a blank sheet of paper? What do they come and ask? What are the critical factors that you and they need to consider when it comes to building AV on a super yacht?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Well, there's several factors really. I mean, yes, people do come to us with a blank sheet of paper, and there's probably a couple of key considerations. One of them, of course, is the wishes of the owner of the yacht. But also what we need to look at is the needs of the vessel as a whole, let's say. Generally, what we will ask first off is how the vessel's going to be used, whether it's going to be a private yacht used by a single family, or whether it's going to be primarily a charter yacht or a mixture of both. Because the wants and needs of the owner might not be the only thing that we need to consider. As I mentioned, charterers. The owner might not be into partying, might not be into loud disco music, that type of thing. But I can guarantee that some charter guests will. So
Oh yeah.
what we have to do is cater for both and make both happy.
Very cool. Now, as I mentioned in the opening, again, not my area of expertise. We've got Daniel on here. I mean, Daniel, when it comes to, again, you're talking to these customers from a Crestron point of view, and again, around content, what's in demand, and clearly there isn't a one size fits all. These are very bespoke projects. I'm going to throw this over to you to help me out here and kind of run through some of the kind of general feedback and questions that you get from these customers and exactly how that integrates with Smart. So I guess content, and how people consume it is going to be the main thing that's in demand. What are you seeing, and how do these systems fit in with regards to content delivery around the spaces and the questions and services that people need?
Yeah, so I mean, content delivery or the way that people consume media is definitely one of the most interesting topics at the moment. Going a bit back to your introduction, you normally talk about meeting rooms, you normally talk about residential, and occasionally maybe hospitality. The fun thing is that actually the yacht can be all of them, right? It is basically a residential object, of course, right? I mean, especially the way that we approach it from Crestron, right? It has a bed in there, people live in there, there's a kitchen in there, so it's residential. In the same time, it can be rented out. You can have guests in there, which is more like what we typically see in hospitality. And on the other hand, we definitely have yachts with meeting rooms in there, because especially with the younger owner group that we see coming on board now, they tend to still be involved with their own businesses and want to be able to work from the yacht as well as if they were in their office. So for me, it's a mixture of all those other worlds that we serve as Crestron. And that also is, for me, one of the big advantages of the fact that Crestron is that wide and is covering all those markets. I can basically cherry pick the solutions that I need from the neighbors to get the right solution on board. But yeah, I mean, going back to content delivery or how people consume media, I think that's definitely one that Tom can also comment on a lot, because he gets that question very often, I know, from his clients, and we just try to make sure that whatever they feel is good for that client, that we support it, right?
Yeah, I can add to that, of course. I mean, yachts by their very nature are different to land-based solutions, to residential, to commercial on land. I mean, if you asked me this question 3 years ago, I would definitely have said offline media systems were the main source of entertainment, let's call it, for guests on board in terms of AV. So your likes of Kaleidoscape, just to give an example product. Just for those who aren't aware, yachts had typically slower internet connections compared with like the fiber optic connections you'd get on land. You'd be talking.
You can't run a cable to a boat when it's floating in the Med or the Caribbean, can you? It's a bit more tricky.
Exactly. I mean, within the last 2 years, some service providers have come online. Starlink being the primary one at the moment, which means that yachts can get hundreds of megabits per second. So much like land-based residential customers, the in-demand products are streaming media platforms such as Netflix, Disney, Apple TV, just to name a few. And as I said, with the faster internet on yachts, it means that it's possible these days.
So mimicking what we have in the world of home and residential is now starting, to be able to live stream to a boat that's floating in the middle of the ocean. I guess you used to have those kind of gyros, stabilized satellite dishes and things like that for picking up like satellite TV, I guess, the actual TV broadcast, whereas now IP is probably becoming more prevalent with things like Starlink and those technologies. That makes it more useful and accessible to a boat that could be anywhere in any ocean, I guess. Or vessel. You keep saying
absolutely.
vessel. I keep saying boat. You keep saying vessel. Let's make sure we get our terminology correct, I guess.
Is no an option with this clientele? We all know that we sometimes get questions that are less expected, so to say. So how do we How do we handle those, and what do we
I
do?
want a unicorn on my boat, and I want, fluffy this, and I want that. It's like, I want it wrapped up in a bow. You must get some really crazy. Maybe we should do that. The craziest request you've had, maybe. But
No, maybe not. Do you say no? Everything's got a cost and a consequence. So providing that somebody's got, for example, the time, the money's not generally within our field is not really a commercial consideration, because people buy yachts for a unique onboard experience. So they don't apply the same commercial, let's say, logic to buying a yacht as to buying a company. So it's an emotional purchase a lot of the time rather than a commercial consideration. So I think the question, you've got to read from the right and work backwards. It's like, okay, so what's the actual intention? What do you want it to do first? Because there's more than one way to approach something. We, and Tom specifically, quite often gets asked, oh, we want one of these products. Okay. Well, this product may be able to do 4 or 5 different things. So what do you actually want it to do? What's the desire? And then what you tend to find is that when you actually delve deeper into it, which is our job, to actually extract the information and then match the technology that's available that will create the solution, you sometimes find that what's actually being asked for as a product, for example, or a system, is not actually what they need, or it's somebody suggested it to them. Now, from our perspective, once we know what the desire is, then we can scan the market, and we can scan commercial, or we can adapt it, or we can design it, and so on and so forth, to actually meet the need of the client. So very rarely do we say no. It's a case of exploring all the options and finding out what the root cause of the desire is. Okay, if you want to time travel, no, pretty damn sure that we can't do that.
But we could put a big helipad on the top, and you can come in on your helicopter if you want. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably do virtual time travel. So again, that's one of those situations where it's like, well, we can take you back into another era virtually. So there is a solution. There's always a solution, but you've got to find out what the requirement is first.
Exactly, Tom. We sort of know what the requirement is now. We have spoken to the client about what kind of media they're looking to look at on board, or what they're trying to consume. Talking about the AV infrastructure on the vessel, what are the latest trends, innovations that you see, or that you have seen already, or that you see coming up for the coming year?
Yeah, I think one thing, Daniel, and just to use some Crestron products as an example. Solutions.
Other products are available, but clearly Crestron are the best.
Solutions such as NVX and the Crestron control platform in its entirety, and some use cases where they really excel is the ability for the user to have content that follows them room to room. I think we're moving away from a sort of a set of sources being dedicated to a room to a set of sources being dedicated to a person. And this is really useful on a yacht because it, as we've touched on, it sort of is like a large residence, but it's also potentially a commercial space. Some of the IT infrastructure is actually, enterprise grade stuff. So we're sort of moving between, classic sectors. And there's obviously lots of rooms. If there's a guest, they'll have a cabin, but then they might use a lounge. And then, if it's sunny, they might want to go outside and watch the TV outside. So there's, a variety of different areas they can watch and listen and, enjoy the entertainment system specifically. So just taking, for example, a guest might be in their cabin, they might be watching Netflix or something else. They press pause, they walk over to the lounge. they log into their profile on the touch panel, and then they just click resume. They don't have to go searching for the media again. They don't have to remember, oh, was I watching Disney or was I watching Netflix? It is the same source, so it follows them around. And as I mentioned before, streaming media, now we have the internet speeds. That's sort of almost seen as a standard offering. It's not seen as anything fancy anymore, really. And
I guess
also
prior to that, they'd have to have a big sort of video on demand server on the boat, and
yeah,
come
exactly,
into dock,
like a
download
Kaleidoscope
everything,
system.
and then you'd be,
Yeah.
let's say, offline while out at sea and out traveling.
Yeah, and getting the media to those systems was quite challenging as well because I mean I'm a fan of Kaleidoscope. I think it's a fantastic system, but the file, the quality is really top notch, but the file sizes for a movie are huge, and even on a yacht internet connection, it's quite demanding. And they do offer a service where hard drives are shipped out, but of course that's less convenient than just pressing play on Netflix, for example. Yeah, just delving more into sort of the control side, I think deep linking and direct launch of from apps is becoming a thing now. So it's more content centric rather than source centric. A guest or the owner doesn't have to go, is this on the Netflix? Let's search Netflix. Let's go through there. Maybe it's on Disney. Let's search through Disney.
Oh,
Actually,
quite,
they
that's
just
the
search for the
worst.
movie,
I mean,
and then it will automatically launch on the relevant app.
yeah, in
And
a residential
that's
space,
possible these days.
that is the worst thing in the world, isn't it? You're like, right, we're going to watch a film, and then it's like, which platform is it on? And then you have all of the trailers you run through, and then it's like, by the time you actually get to watch the film, you've burnt through like 20 minutes of trying to find it, and then trying to work out
Yeah.
which one you want to watch. And yeah, that whole use case and workflow is completely, counterintuitive to any way of working.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think this is where we're seeing the industry move towards, and it'll echo the residential side of things, but maybe with some slightly more commercial products. The guest wouldn't know this, but like the audio distribution is on the larger yachts, it's audio over IP, just because we have so many speakers on a yacht of this size, and then it integrates with various other things, and we're just trying to maintain the quality and ultimately reduce cabling as well for a simpler overall system. So that's sort of more into the commercial space, but then the end user experience is very much in the residential space.
I guess
That's
one
the
interesting
complexity of marine.
Yeah, I was going to say. So the interesting thing, obviously, you talked about, you're sort of blending between consumer, commercial, and you mentioned enterprise there. But what about marine specific? Because clearly these are pretty harsh environments. You've got a TV outside, you've got lighting fixtures outside, you've got speakers outside. It's not just outside in a high street. It's outside with salt water and sandstorms and there's some pretty harsh environments that these devices and solutions. And I guess vibration could be a technical issue. So again, how clearly, Crestron is, we go through this kind of use case testing of our products to make sure that they're, good for those kind of environments. But again, what kind of, testing and capabilities do they need to have? And again, we talked about Starlink. Can you just go and slap a commercial product on a yacht, on a vessel, and expect it to work?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about, well, obviously we have inside and we have outside. Inside of a yacht, it's an air conditioned and quite controlled space. So the only thing we have to worry about there really is the movement of the vessel and vibration. But in terms of temperature, humidity, they're within the normal, let's say, residential range. When you move outside, that can be quite a hostile environment. I mean, a yacht could experience if it goes to Norway, as some of them do, and then goes right down, into sort of the Middle East. You could be looking at temperature ranges of sort of between sort of -10 right up to 50 degrees, and anything in between, and humidity values, very low to very high. So we have to make sure that the products that are used outside are suitably rated and tested. and often just a standard IP rating isn't really sufficient. And yes, talking about Starlink, their products actually I think only have an IP54 for their maritime panel, I believe.
Right.
So yes, it does work. I do know that they are improving it. They will have a version 2 of the maritime panel out soon, because it's there's an odd situation where their other panels have a higher IP rating than the marine panels at the moment, because the marine panel was made before the other ones. But yeah, they're at the moment they're seen as probably need to be replaced every few years.
They're consumable.
But as I say, they are working on that.
Talking about the things that we put on board, and especially the infrastructure, another point of discussion is always what kind of space do we get and what kind of cabling do we get. I know that is also something that a lot of people always wonder about, because, I mean, myself coming into the industry, I was also surprised to see how much technology there is on board, right? Just outside of the AVIT scope, if you look at everything else as well, there is a lot of technology. And basically, as soon as you open up a wall or a ceiling in a yacht, there's technology behind it, right? That is something that you deal with a lot in projects as well, in terms of talking to the shipyards and the designers and explaining them what we need, or trying to make sure that we get what we need.
Yeah, I mean, what you people fail to remember is that a yacht in itself is its own ecosystem. So once it sails away, it's generating its own power, cleaning its own water, disposing of its own waste, and it's got people living on board. With a residential house, it doesn't matter how large it is, it's part of a town.
It typically doesn't move.
It doesn't. Well, hopefully it doesn't move. Yeah, there's something wrong if it does. But what we have to do is we have to take shipyards have to basically build a floating town in a box that meets regulations and safety regulations, and then what they also then have to do, which isn't easy to do, is to create something that's beautiful looking, and sometimes those spaces then become reduced or impractical, and then after that, then you've got to put the things that the owner desires into that space. So the earlier that you can actually get involved, and the earlier you can design it, and the earlier that you can, let's say, isolate those spaces for technology, the better. You won't have seen it, Neil, but Daniel certainly has. If you look at some of the large yacht builders such as Fedship or Larsen, you will see that we will actually virtually build the vessel in 3D form. And when you actually then start to deconstruct the space that's left, it's very little by the time you put the pipes, the cable trays, the safety devices, the furniture, the sound deadening, because what you've got to remember is that this is a luxury vessel. So you can probably build a ship with a lot more space. But when you're building a yacht, you would probably reduce the walls by 200 to 300 millimeters at each wall, because you've then got you've got fire retardancy, you've then got sound deadening, you've got various other special finishes. So your rooms start to shrink.
Bigger on the outside than on the inside.
Yeah, they are massively luxurious. So one of the key things, which obviously Tom can and will expand on because it's his passion, is obviously the IT infrastructure. When I, because I'm the oldest one in this podcast, when I started doing yachts in 1998, it was a very much, you had an AV system and you had an IT system, and never the twain shall meet. Okay, now very much audiovisual has evolved to sit on an IT platform. Now, because it sits on an IT platform, then we have the ability to use less components. Using Crestron, we can use the same components. And if you use the same components, that means by default, you have less connectivity problems because using the same language, technical language. And also, because you're reducing the amount of components within a chain, then your points of failure reduce at the same time as well. So designed properly with the correct product, space becomes less of an issue, or is becoming less of an issue now, because also items are getting more efficient, which means they're giving out less heat. If they give out less heat, then we don't need to generate the cooling levels that we used to back in the day. Amplifiers, for example, run a lot cooler. Class Ds run a huge amount cooler. Flat panel TVs, LED displays now, processing devices, all of those items have evolved massively. And that's beneficial both for reliability and for space.
One thing that we do obviously see is with a larger IT system in place, with maybe more AV functionalities in place, the crew also needs to be able to understand it, work with it, maintain it. How do we, and that is also something that is different from the other markets that we typically see. I mean, a house does not have an ETO. In an office building, there might be a system manager or so, but not specifically somebody who's looking after the AV system. So also that is quite unique from the yachting space. Maybe we can elaborate a bit on the crew and how important they are to the experience, as well as how do we support them? How do we help them doing their job?
Yeah, I think, well, just for the viewers who aren't aware, some of these yachts carry crews of 40 to 70 people.
Seriously?
Seriously, yeah, in
Wow.
various roles. So you obviously have the navigation staff who are in charge of sailing the yacht, and then you have the engineering staff who are in charge of sort of the engine room and the technical things. Then you have deck crew, you have interior staff, housekeepers, and then you have sort of what we determine as the ETOs and the ITOs, so
Just for
officers.
for the people who don't know, ETO, do you want to demystify the acronym?
Electrotechnical officer, and then an
okay.
ITO, which is an IT officer or IT engineer. So
Gotcha.
electrotechnical officer looks after the electrical systems. So on the smaller yachts, then they generally also look after the AVIT. On the larger yachts, we're talking sort of maybe 100 meters length plus. You have dedicated IT officers who look after the AV and IT system. And probably what I would say is, I know most people would be thinking probably these systems are quite complex, but I'd say if the AV system is complex, then it's been designed wrong.
Right.
I'll be quite blunt about it. Whilst the sort of the number of features available to the guest and to the crew to manage it has increased, I'd say the overall complexity, providing it's been designed correctly, of course, has actually reduced, especially since the widespread use of audio over IP solutions. So we already had sort of digital video, we had DM, which was fairly simple in the way it operates, and then went to NVX. And now going to audio over IP solutions, I mean, that has saved a huge amount of cabling, a huge amount of devices that are needed. I'd say it's true to say that we rely on the IT system a lot more, as Steve mentioned. Before it was an AV system and an IT system. It might have had a single cable link between them, but now the AV system, pretty much in its entirety, sits on top of the IT system.
Right.
So they've had to become larger to accommodate the AV system. Probably, yes, they have got a little more complicated than they were 5 or 10 years ago. I mean, I would say, any, crew that are watching this, I'd put my focus more in learning about IT rather than AV, just because a lot of the issues that you would see are actually rooted in the IT system, and knowing how to overcome them is quite important, especially in sort of real time things like audio over IP. Latency is key. If a system gets overloaded, then the audio will essentially stop working. But I'd also say IT systems don't have to be complicated. That they do have logic to them. They sort of have layers, and they're just replicated, much like an AV system can be. With the flexibility we have in the sort of the modern day products, it's not quite a copy and paste per room and per area, but you can design them very similarly, regardless of whether it's like a large lounge or it's a VIP bedroom. They can be designed in a very similar way using the same products. And a little bit off topic, but going back to storage space, being a real premium. You're in the middle of the sea, something breaks. You can't just go to your local Best Buy, your local, your local store and get a spare. So you have to carry spares on board. If you've got commonality, you maybe only have to, carry one spare, two spares, because then you could use it over multiple rooms rather than having two of this product A, two of product B, two of product C, and that obviously takes up storage space.
So repeatability
so
and the ability to have those, those kind of packages that, are same screens or the same vendor screen, same vendors, transmitters, receivers, and those component speakers, lights. Again, the ability to have, a stock of spares is useful, and not to have, again, a complete hodgepodge of different solutions across the space.
Yeah,
absolutely.
One thing that we did many years ago, and I convinced two owners to do it, was to build the crew mess in exactly the same way as either a lounge or the owner's suite. And first of all, I got pushback. Well, I'm not going to spend X amount of thousands on my bedroom and then give the crew exactly the same. And it's like, oh, you're missing the point. You benefit two ways from this. First of all, your crew get very familiar with the way that this works, how it works, its operation, how it functions, and familiarity with the product. The second benefit is if something breaks in the lounge or the owner's bedroom, you've got you're carrying spares already, because all you do is you just take it out the crew mess. And then suddenly it was an easy sell. It's like, actually, I don't have to buy spares, and I've got a technical benefit. So here, presto, if you look at a lot of yachts now, they've followed that pattern, where they'll actually build the crew mess exactly the same way as one of the main lounges, for that very reason. And we pushed that, we pioneered that.
Makes a lot of sense, absolutely. Talking about the evolution of yachts and the evolution of technology on board in generic, not AVIT specific, because so far we've been mainly talking about AVIT, of course. But any things that you are most excited about at the moment for upcoming projects? I mean, we've seen yards that are very busy now with alternative fuels and things like hydrogen, something like that maybe, or something completely different. I know you both like technology in general, so.
Yeah, I think it's sort of immersive experiences. It's all about talking about experiences rather than a single product. Seeing let's say a good uptake with, to use a product term, LED video walls. The technology in LEDs and video walls is progressing all the time, and I think in the next 2 years we're going to have another step change in terms of quality and pixel pitch of these systems. They have challenges when installing them on yachts, because obviously the yacht is a moving platform. and LED panels are made up of multiple smaller panels to make a larger panel. And if they move, then the pixels no longer align. So it's quite difficult to do, but we have successfully done it on a vessel recently where we made a corridor that was. It was a vessel in refit. It was quite a narrow corridor that was about 10 meters long. So we had LED video panels, full height, installed on both sides, and that plays a variety of content coupled with sound that's individually addressable, so it can actually draw the guest into sort of the middle of the corridor, and you can have different sounds actually follow you down the corridor. That's pretty cool, I think. I think that's where we're going.
I've seen a little video of that one. I've seen a little video of that one. I think Tom online. Yeah. Maybe something for Neil to look up and to in the montage put it in here. But and otherwise, now the viewers have to go and Google for that video. But
yeah, I think from broadly, obviously. The sector that we're in is, for want of a better word, an experience. People buy yachts for the experience. We're talking about yachts, we're talking about engines, we're talking about power, we're talking about technology, we're talking about Crestron. Ultimately, it's about the experience. And if the experience is pleasurable, enjoyable, then it's a memory. People will always remember. And going back to what Tom said, and we've had this discussion internally, we genuinely think over the next 5 years that actual product will be driven by content, not the other way around. Because we obviously not pioneered the video wall, but put in that video wall, which was an extremely difficult thing to do because it was curved into planes. We had to take into account what we talked about earlier, which was heat, movement, cooling, all of the above, which was achieved. But then the big impact was not the fact it was a video wall. It was like, what can I now do with this video wall? And obviously, you've got interaction, you've got basic things like obviously standard content, but then there's interactive content. You can turn it into, we've done video ceilings, for example. One thing that Tom hasn't talked about, which was a solution because the client wanted a window on the same yacht, and structurally it was not possible to do it. So Tom and his team designed a broadcast quality system where there's a camera outside and a video wall inside, and it becomes a virtual window. But it can also then, when that's not being used, you can create content and obviously themes for various things. So 4th of July, birthdays, various other things, interaction, playing, obviously movies. The kids are out on the jet ski, replay it back in various other areas. We've done one of our early ones, which I'm sure you're aware of, the retractable screen, but that actually turned around 180 degrees, so the client could theoretically sit in his favourite restaurant with his yacht in the bay and actually watch content, or play content when his guests, some very famous guests, were coming up on the tender. So he would play a movie that the guest was starring in. And that's all about the experience, the desire, and the solution. So when somebody says, I want a big TV on the aft deck, okay, what do you want it to do? Okay, you asked me earlier on what's some of the craziest things that they've done. Okay, so the client wanted to sit in a restaurant with his 90-plus metre boat in the bay and watch TV on it. That's pretty darn crazy, but it's what he wanted. It hadn't been done before. We worked with a fantastic shipyard and engineering team that was able to do that, and we created the solution. And now it's become, I won't say it's become the norm, but there's a lot of yachts asking for it.
Once it's that herd mentality. Once one person's got it, it becomes a standard. I guess then everybody wants that feature on their yacht. I guess.
Yeah.
Well, but I think very well said. And since we're on top of the hour, it's about time that we get to a close as well, I think, Neil. But I think it's a very good point to end with. Is it's all about experience. So we talked about how we maybe sometimes are more like residential, maybe sometimes more commercial, maybe sometimes more hospitality. But in the end, I think the industry that we are in is very much about experience, about giving the people that have the fundings to actually purchase a yacht or charter a yacht the experience that they are looking for, so that they are willing to do it again and again and invite their friends over. And with that, this industry grows. So it's all, in the end, about experience.
Very cool. Yeah, again, so thank you, gentlemen, for coming on and talking about a different kind of space in today's Smarter Spaces podcast. I've learned a lot. Again, I always find it fascinating, again, taking the products that we create at Crestron and taking them into a different environment to solve similar but different solutions. And again, it's just captivating to hear some of these anecdotes and some of these stories. Daniel, thank you for hosting with me and helping me out and again teaching me and learning. And Steve and Tom, thank you for joining us and kind of giving us a glimpse into your world of fitting out these different spaces. I guess before we close off, where can people find out more information about the services that you offer, and to get in touch with you if they want to learn more about the stuff that you do?
I think the easiest is to use our alternative website address, which is smart.yachts. That will take you to our website.
Is that a smart? So it's not .com, not .co.uk, but .yachts. I love that.
.yachts. Yeah.
Who knew? I certainly didn't. Very good. Daniel, where can people find out more information about what Crestron has to offer in our marine space? I guess would be one from your side.
Crestron.com/marine, Neil. I still have the old-fashioned setup.
Love it. Yeah, love it. Love it. Well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I'll let you sail off into the sunset. Thank you for joining us on today's show. For those watching, thank you for joining in. I mean, the whole world of super yacht is a different space. If you're in that world, welcome and thank you for joining us. If you're not, then hopefully we've given you a glimpse and a teaser of what goes on into a marine AV systems and, the challenges around, toughness, reliability, the environments that these go into. And again, having that ability to have a critical solution such as DMMVX or NAX to be able to distribute that audio and video over an IP network, make it simple and easy to deploy, and to bring that mix around flexibility and scalability, whether it's in an office, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in a hotel or hospitality, someone's resident or someone's super yacht. Crestron has you covered for all of that. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Smart Spaces podcast. We do this every week. Make sure you subscribe, link, join, share to your friends wherever you get your social media content, and we'll catch you probably not on a boat but maybe back in an office for next time's episode. Thank you.